Ambassador Gallegos, you have been a lifelong career diplomat for Ecuador for many years. You've also represented your country at the United Nations. You've witnessed so much change and conflict over the years. So when you look around at what's happening today, all around the world, what comes to your mind?
Well, I'm very much concerned in the fracture of the multilateral system. I agree with the Secretary General that we have a system which is not operating correctly in the sense that we created it. The rupture between the principles and the guidance of a worldwide system which was geared to peace is failing humanity. The problems we are facing as a human race, like climate change, are one of the most particular threats we have. We've just surpassed, maybe not surpassed, but almost at the point of ending the pandemic, which I think was the most complicated conflict we've had in modern times. It affected every one of the 193 members of the United Nations, but it also affected each one of us. We all know people who have died. We were affected by COVID. And I think that we are still in the stage of analyzing what the actual effects were.
UNITAR was created in the 1960s to train young diplomats, and there was, at that time, a lot of conflict in the world, much like what we see right now. What do you see in the diplomats, the young diplomats especially, that are working across the world today to try to solve some of these conflicts?
We train diplomats, but we train 500,000 people a year. From different segments of the world, not only bureaucracies, but also from the private sector. What does it mean to diplomats? It means that they acquire the knowledge of the complexities of the UN, the historical protocols that you require to present a resolution, how to negotiate to build consensus, how to not lock into positions that are obstructive, the extraordinary number of issues that we are dealing with. There is no way human beings can adequately know, if they are not trained and taught and learn about the complexities, from climate change to health, from issues of migration to refugees, issues that deal with political and economic circumstances. So I think it's a very valuable issue to have the diplomats that go into the UN, that are posted to the UN, to acquire those capabilities, and then the ones who are in the UN to acquire a better knowledge of capacity building of what these subject matters are, with the foremost professors and experts in the fields.
Just before the pandemic, in the year 2020, UNITAR delivered some 900 learning activities benefiting over 300,000 people. How did the pandemic change your goals, and how did UNITAR adapt throughout the pandemic to continue?
Well, I think the pandemic made UNITAR more relevant in the sense of distance learning. We all were secluded in our houses. We were blocked into this issue, and so the context of capacity building was based on Zoom and other mechanisms of teaching. We still do this. I think that will continue in many of the cases.
There's a big project about energy change and environment in China. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We work with China in a number of projects, as we do with other countries. Of course, China is very relevant. Climate change is one of the complexities of modern civilization. We are finding natural disasters increasing in their dynamics. We are finding that it's creating modern migration patterns, the increase of deserts, the lack of water. All these issues have to be dealt with in the context of what the United Nations holds very dearly, which is trying to decrease the heating of the world. Now, if we can be able to adequately look into solutions to that problem, we are looking into the solutions of how humanity will respond to this.
Ambassador, one of your personal crusades is working for the elderly, senior welfare. And as we know, people these days are living much longer lives. Is getting trained, learning new things, an important part in helping this segment of the population?
First of all, I'm 77, so that's an inspiration by itself. But the truth of the matter is that I was very, very affected by the deaths that were caused in the pandemic to the age group that was aging. On a good day in New York, 1,000 people would die, and most of them would be elderly. I was posted, and I was in the lockdowns in New York and during the pandemic, and I accepted being foreign minister of Ecuador because of the pandemic to get the vaccines that we required. So I passionately became convinced that we required a UN convention to protect the rights of persons who are aging. We are 1 billion people who are aging at the moment. We're more aging than children being born. So the world has changed, and we require an initiative of governance that will make the possibility of a negotiation of a convention very similar to the one that I chaired, which is the Convention for Persons with Disabilities, which is probably the most successful convention of human rights that the UN has, because it covers 187 countries. It protects 1.3 billion people. And disability is something that you were born with a disability, you may acquire it during your life by accidents, by sickness, by war, as we see every day in Ukraine and Gaza. But when you age, when you get to 65, you have 85% possibilities of having a disability. So the two are interlinked in a way that I find is very important in the protection of the dignity of persons who are aging, who are disabled, and who are vulnerable in the long term.
Ambassador Luis Gallegos, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.